And good morning. Welcome to another edition of the Real Estate Radio Hour, brought to you by Chris Rooney with the Realty House and Andy Prasky with RE/MAX Real Estate Properties. And they're both in studio, and we're glad.
Morning, guys.
Hi, guys. Good to see you again.
You too.
What are we going to be? We're talking real estate, of course. And again, before I even throw it back to you, let's let our listeners know that if you do have a real estate-related question, you can do it either by phone or by text, 651-989-9226. Or send a text to the guys at 81807.
Had a really interesting thing happen this week, Denny, in regards to it was one of the agents that works for us had a deal with someone who had that home buyer tax credit. You know, that was given out, and there were certain lengths in some of it depending on how much money you got. But what was interesting is that they had to deal with, you know, if you sell and you make money, you've got to pay that back. You know, and I don't think a lot of people know that. So what we did, as always, go to our tax questions. We got Chris Mahowald with MFK Associates on, and we just kind of wanted him to maybe explain a little about, you know, what is happening with that tax credit.
Tell us, Chris. Hi.
Good morning. How are you guys today?
Good.
Good. Yeah, Chris, the first-time homebuyer credit, as you had mentioned, it started in 2008. It was a $7,500 tax credit. And for that tax credit, that one actually has to be repaid over 15 years. So $500 per year, that tax credit gets repaid. In 2009 and 2010, the IRS passed another bill where there's a $6,500 credit and an $8,000 credit. And those two credits do not need to be repaid if you stay in your home for more than 3 years. So as long as you keep it your principal residence for 3 years, you don't have to repay the credit. But if you sell your house or move out of your house, it's no longer your principal residence, you rent that house out, that would trigger repayment of the full credit. And what happens is if you sell your house and you happen to have a loss on the house, as long as the loss is greater than the original tax credit, the $6,500 or $8,000, you don't have to repay the credit. So,
I was going to say, Chris, and Andy, that that's kind of a big thing. I mean, we've seen some appreciation from that tax credit time till now, and people are taking that next move. And I'll tell you what, that's a very important thing. And I guess I didn't, and I don't know if you did, Andy, but that from the 2008 one, from the 2009 and 10 one, over the 15 years versus the other one, I mean, that's a big deal.
Well, I remember I had some of you want to talk about being upset about being a buyer on the fence? I remember back in the day when we crossed the magic line of, okay, now you don't have to repay them, but you did before. I had some of my past customers kind of coming back and saying, well, we should have waited, or it was kind of a funny time, but anyway.
Yeah, it's a good thing. So what else, Chris, do you got there?
Yeah, and I guess I also forgot to mention that 2008, if you do sell your home, that accelerates the repayment. So again, let's say it's 2012, I've repaid 4 years worth. I sell the home now. I would have paid $500 a year, so $2,000. I'd have to repay the remaining $5,500 this year if I sell the home. So yeah, I mean, it's been, so 2010 would have been the last year, 2 years since people would have got the credit, and like you say, you kind of forget about, okay, I do have to repay that if I, sell my house and have a gain on it. Like you said, the real estate market has been turning, and, there's some appreciation in the home. So it's something people really need to think about if they're looking at selling their home. They did get the credit the last couple of years because, you don't want to have that surprise come April 15th where all of a sudden, hey, I have to repay another $8,000.
Right. Well, the other thing, too, is that a lot of those people, Chris, and Andy knows, I mean, in a transaction that you're going to try to buy that next place, and maybe you don't have a ton of equity, but you were counting on that $4,000 or $5,000 that now is going back to the government to be able to buy your next house. I mean, that could ruin some deals.
Oh, absolutely. Or at least it covers your selling expenses in some cases,
Right, exactly. So hook it up with knowledgeable people is a good thing.
It is.
Yeah. So, Chris, we appreciate you calling in.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Chris.
Have a great day.
You
Bye-bye.
too.
Bye-bye.
Another thing, Andy, that we've been seeing is multiple offers.
Yep.
On properties. And, I kind of brought us up into talking when we were preparing for the show, talking about, what are some things that when you're in multiple offers that would make, yours stand out or be better, or what to kind of keep in mind when you're doing that?
Well, I've always, said in the first place is that in a competitive environment, you want to make yourself as attractive as possible, making sure that your financing, if you are financing, is obviously favorable and you have all your ducks in a row. You're maybe even more than just a looks good letter. You actually have your fully underwritten approval, which makes a difference to the sellers. Making sure you're putting a decent amount of earnest money down has always been a big one for us. And I always say when you write an offer, if you write an offer with your foot out the door, the seller can see that. Like if you have contingencies is what I call that. And they'd like you to present an offer where you're locked up to them, you're committed, you're going to follow through and perform on the agreement that's on the table. So where you have your inspection contingencies or your financing contingencies, big word for me, Don't laugh at me.
I'm not saying nothing.
I know. Say that 3 times fast. Contingencies. Anyway, so you go back to the what I was saying is that when you have those inspections and all those things cleared up on the front end, especially with a short sale, which we've got a great guy in here today again, Jeff Zwiefel with Mark Veen Zwiefel. We'll talk about this. Is that when we're presenting offers on short sales, I always put our best foot forward, putting the getting all those contingencies even removed before the actual offer goes to the bank for approvals, too, is a really important.
I think another piece on that, too, is that I tell people, and I see it a lot with my sellers when we're in that situation, is make it clean. And what that means is that don't put all the little caveats in there. As clean as you can possibly put it. And if you want, the swing set and the shed and this and this and that, I mean, that just confuses things, If you keep it clean, that seller can focus on one thing, and that's the price. And ultimately, a lot of times it comes down to that.
Well, and what's going to happen is, and I had this happen, and the couple that's listening, they'll laugh, is the old, we negotiated a deal, and they agreed to buy the couch in the basement. Well, the couch they presumed was leather was actually pleather. So the seller says, I couldn't have got that couch out of the basement anyway, so I'm glad you guys decided to pay $500 for it. And it was all legit.
That.
And it was all legit. It was all on the contract and everything. But what was funny is that at closing, they kind of got into a miff over the closing costs. Well, Nick came up and he goes, well, at least I'll get the $500 back because the couch was pleather anyway. It's not leather, it was pleather. So anyway.
So what happened?
Well, this is what I'm saying. We're in real estate. We're not in the furniture business.
Yeah,
and so like Chris is saying, to complement that, don't get confused. You're there to buy the house. You're not there to buy the stuff.
And a lot of that stuff
causes problems.
Causes huge problems. It does.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. I know when we come back after this break, you had the chance to talk with Jennifer from Wells Fargo.
Jennifer Durkheisen at Wells Fargo. Yeah, so we got actually a 3-part interview kind of talking about some different programs. Good stuff.
After the break, we'll join Chris and Jennifer after this break. And stay with us, 651-989-9226, or send a text at 81807. Back with more of the Real Estate Radio Hour here on 830 WCCO.